I can even put another kind of film in front of the same light and reveal it as another color. So these are things that were born out of the 1960s, played with by Yale Gracie and the rest of the Illusioneering crew, but also are things that we still play with today. So with that, I want to show kind of a few other things. This is actually painted with paint right here, but it's invisible paint. And when I take an ultraviolet light on it, you can create all the colors of the rainbow. Which again, I mean, imagine how you can create specters and ghosts and all fun things in the world with that. So with the same kind of idea, that's fluorescence. We have the notion of phosphorescence, which as a kid I knew as glow in the dark, same thing. So this is covered with glow in the dark vinyl. And you see when I use an ultraviolet laser, I can actually draw on that and create ectoplasm or whatever else we decide we need at the time. But with that fun technique and technology of lasers, which are always fun, you can create things like bands of light by simply changing the optics. Optics is a big part of illusion making. So right now I'm going to make that line into a bar. And I can also make that line, or dot, into many dots. So again, we got to play with weird stuff and see what weird things we could do with it. So as I said before, laundry detergent is a wonderful tool for cleaning your clothes, but it can do many other things too. So here I have some laundry detergent, and if I put it on my hand, you can see my hand starts to glow. And you can do really neat things with it on Halloween, like paint it on walls and make things appear and disappear. Again, all from something simple you could get in the grocery store. So that was always a fun toy as a child to play with. Again, a normal child. That's what I keep telling myself. So the other thing, we always say smoke and mirrors, right? That's what special effects is. Well, this is one of the best technologies. It took thousands of years to create. Finally, humans figured out how to make a perfect mirror. And us illusion makers love these things because you can use them for anything. So we use a lot of different mirror techniques throughout our attractions. This is an infinity box that you can see here. And kind of, again, 100-year-old technology technique, but how can we turn it on its head and use it in new and wacky ways? Sort of in the same idea, lasers have been around a while. This is a green laser. I'm gonna put on some safety glasses here, so I'm safe. Oh no, of course not. No. So what happens, again, asking weird questions is kind of the life of an Imagineer. What happens when you shoot water into a laser? Wow. Was that on? Yes. You get pixie dust. Weird things like that. And then other things, this is a neat little toy that shoots smoke out of it. What happens if you create smoke bubble, or smoke rings? Wow. So you can make things appear that, again, ghostly specters, all because of playing with something that maybe it wasn't necessarily meant for. We like to call that, hey, that was a good misuse of technology you have there. And that's a badge of honor, believe you me. Another thing, this is a technique, I could take these off now. Oh, you're not all orange after all. Is diachroic filters. We use these for a lot of different effects. But this is such a neat thing, just by simply turning it. Do you see, because of the wavelength of light and the frequency of light, we can get the colors to change. Again, how can we use that weird phenomenon for something? We'll figure it out. So one of the things that we play with as a tool, just like a piece of clay to paint with, is video and projection. And we like to use it in moderation, and we like to use it where appropriate. But there's some really fun things you can do with video projection. So we'll see here, this guy turns on. Okay. I'm going to turn on over here a fan. This is not one of my biggest fans. Okay, sorry, it has to boot up. While that's booting up, down here is a 3D print of the Hatbox Ghost. This was actually created from the original mold that was used for us to redo, or resurrect, if you will, the Hatbox Ghost back in 2016. But this was made from the original mold in the 60s, and now we have it digitally. But I'd like to think it's the only one in the world.
So you're on the table.
Sorry. I always get under the table. What the heck? So another thing, which is kind of from the world of animation, which is where our craft as Illusioneers was born from, is persistence of vision. That's where you get a repeating pattern that creates animation or the illusion of motion. So again, being a weird child growing up, what happens if you put a fan you have a fan and put video projection in it? You get my face in a fan. But what's cool about that is it's also transparent. There's something we can do with that. So with that same idea, I have this magic wand over here, which is just a stick. And again, persistence of vision. You can have my face appearing in midair. Again, you come into our lab and we're all doing really weird things all day. It's like, huh, that's a nice one of those. This is probably the best one of these I've seen today.
It's very handsome.
I try. So with that, I think we have a whole bunch of passionate people and really excited folks who've really been touched with the history and the love of the Haunted Mansion into their new careers today. This is an example of exactly that. So,
round of applause for Daniel Joseph, Master Illusioneer. Thank you. I didn't want you over my shoulder the rest of the presentation. All right, so we have from someone who admires Yale Gracie, our next guest is actually has a much closer personal relationship with one of the lead Imagineers from the Haunted Mansion. Let's go ahead and we're gonna get ready for our next guest. Here we go. Please put your hands together. He's an author, amazing artist, fantastic overall Imagineer. Chris Merritt is here to talk about his adventures with Marc Davis.
Hi everybody, how you guys doing today? Good. How much do we love the Haunted Mansion, right? Amazing, amazing. Well, so Kevin asked me to come out and talk a little bit about Marc and Alice Davis, who I was lucky enough to have a relationship with. And there's this new book coming out that Pete Docter and I done. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in time to when I was a little kid in the 70s. And let's go ahead and start this. Yeah, so this thing. Who out here had the Haunted Mansion record? I wore out like 3 copies. Wow, what is going on here? Jeez. I wore out like 3 copies of this record, playing it over and over again. It had a huge influence on me. I used it for a sound effects record in elementary school plays. And what really killed me about these beautiful illustrations that were done by an Imagineer named Colin Campbell, by the way, it gave a sense of a story behind the Haunted Mansion. So I loved it as an attraction, but it was it added an extra dimension to it with this storybook record. So I played this thing to death, drove my brother crazy with it. And to this day, I look at these illustrations and the colors are really, really gorgeous. So that had a big impact on me as a kid in the 70s. And another thing that had a big impact on me as a kid in the 70s was, they don't sell it anymore, but they used to sell this Pirates of the Caribbean souvenir guidebook. Did anyone out there have that guidebook in their collection? It's great. It's really, really interesting because not only is it filled with pictures of Walt and the other Imagineers designing Pirates of the Caribbean, but there are all these great illustrations inside. And so me, as a little kid and being a Disneyland nut, I used to copy these drawings and I used to actually trace them, and it actually kind of helped me learn how to draw, which was a really cool thing. I had no idea who any of these guys were. I knew they were Imagineers, but there were no names attached, so I didn't know who these people were, what their backgrounds were. Well, come to find out, the main person, most of the drawings in the book are done by this gentleman right here, and that is a gentleman named Marc Davis. Marc was an amazing Imagineer, but he actually got his start in his career, for those of you who don't know, as an animator. So he animated Cruella de Vil, Maleficent, all kinds of things going back to the 1930s. And in the early 60s, Walt Disney actually asked him to come to Imagineering, we called it WED at the time, and actually design some things for him. So he ended up designing on the Jungle Cruise, Enchanted Tiki Room, Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, all the New York World's Fair shows. Just really, really prolific Imagineer. Well, I didn't know any of that back then. So let's go back to the late 1980s, and this is a young me as a Jungle Cruise skipper. One of the most fun jobs I've ever had. And so while I was working at the park, they give you a lot of breaks to keep you fresh. And one of the things I like to do on my breaks were go upstairs above Pirates of the Caribbean to the newly opened Disney Gallery. Now, this was really interesting to me because it was the first time Imagineering artwork had really been allowed to be displayed publicly. And when I went up there for the first time, my head exploded because I saw all these drawings that I had copied as a little kid, and I went, oh my gosh, this is the guy. Who did this? This is this guy named Marc Davis. This is amazing. So, they had rotating gallery exhibits, and they had a Haunted Mansion one at one time, and so it was really great to see. Marc was so prolific. He had so many different styles, and I thought, gosh, this guy's an incredible artist. These drawings really speak to me. I was also going to community college at the time, and I had an art history class that I had to take, and I had to do a paper on a modern day artist, and I thought, boy, Marc Davis is still around, but I don't know him. I don't know how I would get in touch with him, or, so what I did was I sent a letter cold up to the studio and said, would you please forward this to Marc Davis for me? And believe it or not, they actually did, and in a couple weeks, I got this really nice letter back from Marc Davis. And Marc said, come on up, Alice and I would love to host you, and come on up and you can interview me and talk to me about anything. And again, my head exploded for a second time. So my dad and I got in our car, and we drove up from Orange County to Los Angeles. And when Marc greeted us at the door and let us in, his house is absolutely amazing. It's like a museum. Every square inch is covered with artwork and Papua New Guinea artifacts from he and Alice's travels there over the years. Original Mary Blairs, all kinds of amazing, pictures of him with Walt. And so it was amazing to me. There even that hand up there, that's Lincoln's original hand that he had, push pinned to the wall, right? That's all. So we worked our way back to basically a little area that, oh, I forgot this. This is so cool. Right when you enter the house to the left, Marc had recreated these gates he had designed for the Haunted Mansion. And we never actually installed those, but he loved the design so much he had someone recreate it in his house for him. Okay, so that's a 20-year-old me sitting with Marc. Nice acid wash jeans, and interviewing him and asking him. So I just sat him down for a couple hours and I asked him every question I could think about. How did you do Pirates of the Caribbean? How did you stage the gags in the Jungle Cruise? I really wanted to know because at this point there weren't many books out about Imagineering history. This was all kind of still a mystery. Like, how do you do this sort of work? I was starting to think, I might like to do this for a job someday. Like, how do you figure this out? One of the things that killed me, though, I said, at the end of the interview, I said, well, Marc, did you save any photographs of your time working with Walt Disney at Imagineering, or did you save any of your drawings? And he said, well, as I say, follow me back here. So we went back into this little room, and this is Marc's studio, and where he was still doing artwork, he was still drawing and designing and doing sketches, and he went into this little closet in the back, and he came out with all these big file folders, and they said Haunted Mansion, Tiki Room, Jungle Cruise. He kept all his original pencil rough sketches throughout the years. So the final artwork he did, we still have at Walt Disney Imagineering in our art collections, but the pencil roughs, he kept all those. And they're amazing. They're absolutely incredible. You're sitting there holding his original idea for the, what are we calling her? Sally Stiltwell, the Parasol Girl, and Sally Slater, excuse me, yes. And the Hitchhiking Ghost and the organ player. So these were all his first original ideas for the Haunted Mansion. He also kept a lot of photos. So this is a great photo of Marc with Walt Disney. And he's actually showing one of the changing portraits from the Haunted Mansion. And for me, I recognize that instantly. I mean, it is absolutely iconic, the work he did while you're in the mansion. So I kept in touch. I was like, oh my gosh, like these people are amazing. And I ended up going to California Institute of the Arts. So it was really easy for me to drive down from Valencia to Los Angeles and take them to lunch and say, tell me about staging for the Jungle Cruise. Tell me about working on the Enchanted Tiki Room, those sort of things. And they were really supportive to me. They actually, they donated artwork to our charities. This is actually Marc's original pencil sketch of the Hitchhiking Ghost that we auctioned off for charity at CalArts. And one of my prized possessions when I finally got hired in Imagineering as a gift, Marc gave me his original pencil sketch of the opera ghosts there. So what I like to do is I like to take Marc's designs and compare them with the pictures of the show as it is installed today. And you can see his influence is undeniable. I mean, it is so spot on close. Here's the banquet scene. Here's the musicians and the party at the graveyard at the end. I mean, it's almost like you can almost overlay the photos over Marc's artwork and see how close it is. Here's the hearse that got stuck in the mud, and the cottons have slipped out, and they're having a tea party. And of course, the Hitchhiking Ghosts, which are just completely iconic. Another thing that Marc designed that's completely iconic are the stretching portraits in the stretching gallery, which I think are really, really interesting. And another thing that was really fun for me, so when I finally got to Walt Disney Imagineering, the first thing I did was I went right to our art collections and I said, can I see the Marc Davis designs for the Haunted Mansion? And this was really interesting to me, this next one. This is a ghost that Marc designed called the Phantom Drummer of Tedworth. And I believe he based that on a historical ghost. Is that a thing? Yeah. Anyway, he based it on some research he did in our library. And you look at the face, it's very similar to what he came up with for the Hatbox Ghost. So here is Marc's final design for the Hatbox Ghost, and you can see what an iconic figure it is. I mean, how many people here love the Hatbox Ghost? I sure do. And it's so amazing that, you know, Daniel Joseph was able to bring it back. For those of you who don't know, Marc designed this Hatbox Ghost. The idea was, with every beat of the bride's heart, his head would disappear from his body and reappear in the hatbox. But unfortunately, when they did it in the 60s, it didn't really work too well, and it only lasted a couple weeks. So that ghost was gone for many, many years. But I remember, you know, seeing it as a kid in the record album. Well, it was so cool that Dan was able to bring it back with his team that worked with him. Okay, so all this stuff. So I've loved Marc Davis and Alice Davis. They've been a big influence in my life as a designer and Imagineer. I was on assignment in Shanghai, and I was actually Skyping with Alice Davis in the evenings, telling her about the challenges we were going through and getting advice from her. And I said, you know, it would be really, really cool if we could do a big coffee table book on all of Marc's artwork from Imagineering throughout the years. And she said, oh my, Marc would be so pleased. So that's what we did. And my good friend Pete Doctor from Pixar and I, when I got back from China, we actually spent the day with Alice and some people from our art collections team, and Alice basically turned the whole house over to us. So all those pencil sketches, all those photos are amazing. So that, in combination with our art collection and our archives, Pete and I were able to put together this big, giant 2-volume book. It weighs 11 pounds, so warning if you're going to get one and carry it around the expo. It's almost 800 pages. It's Marc's whole career throughout the 1960s and 70s at Imagineering. I guarantee you there's photos and artwork that you have never seen before in there. So it's exclusively available this weekend. If you want to get it, that's great. And I think that's all I have.
Round of applause for Chris. All right, Chris actually isn't the only Jungle Cruise skipper turned Imagineer. You may have recognized me from a couple expos ago. We did the 60th anniversary of the Jungle Cruise panel. Jungle Cruise is something part of me. And so when it came time to put together this presentation, I really couldn't get it out of my DNA that I had to do something Jungle Cruise related. If I didn't, I'd have skippers around the world super disappointed in me. So we have a special treat for you. We are actually proud to present a one-time showing of, slide transition, the Skipper's Tour of the Haunted Mansion. Take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our Skipper Tour of the Haunted Mansion.
To celebrate this beloved Disneyland classic, we, your brave and daring Jungle Cruise skippers, have decided to go on an expedition to the far reaches of New Orleans Square. Hey Jen, what kind of jokes are we going to tell on this?
Deadpan. Hello? Test? Test? This mic is dead. Oh, I get it. Well, here at the Haunted Mansion, they say that the grass is always greener on the other side. But if you ask anyone in the cemetery, they'll tell you it's just dirt.
Maybe we should bury that joke. Some people report hearing a horse attached to this hearse, but I say nay!
Strangely, some find the Haunted Mansion to be very romantic, especially spiders. Just look at all the newlyweds.
Right here is our first ghost! He says he is a kind, generous, handsome billionaire. Clearly he's lying. You can see right through him.
Believe it or not, we had a hard time coming up with jokes for this room. Skipper Nick was pitching a lot of ideas, but to be honest, he was really stretching.
Here's our beloved Constance and her late husband, George. Very handsome, man. Look at those chiseled features.
I think we should get out of here. It looks like that guy has a really short fuse.
We really need to keep chipping away at these. You know, I've often wondered how powerful these doom buggies are. Turns out they're only 13 horsepower. Oh, hey. He's sounding way better. He was coughing earlier. Just ahead on the left, Madame Leota, the head psychic. I wanted to get her a hat, so I asked her what size. She's a medium.
I bet you didn't see that joke coming, but she did. Oh, looks like they're having a really good time down there. Everyone's having a ball.
Right over there is the only organ in the Haunted Mansion. All the others decomposed.
Oh, look at that. It's our blushing bride, Constance. She is so lovely. Some people even say she has a smile to die for.
Look, it's the Hatbox Ghost. You know, even in the afterlife, he's always working to get ahead. You know, I once had a short-lived career as a gravedigger.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They fired me for putting 3 pairs of shoes in every hole.
Why'd you do that?
Because they said everyone needed to be 6 feet under. So they gave me the boot. They said I wasn't a good fit. Even after I put my soul into it.
I can dig it.
It's okay, I've got lots of dirt on it.
And now it's time for the most dangerous turn in our journey. Our return to the mortal realm.
If you had a good time today, I am the brave and handsome Skipper Nick. This is Skipper Jen, and this has been the world-famous Haunted Mansion.
And if you didn't have a good time today, my name is Henry, and this is Albert. And this has been Mystic Manor.
The Skipper's Tour of the Haunted Mansion. Special thanks to Skipper Nick and Skipper Jen. Real life Jungle Cruise skippers, you can catch them across the street. If you don't see them on the dock, just give them 7.5 minutes. They'll be right back around. This is going to bring us to probably like one of my highlights of the show. I'm going to bring out one of my fellow writers, Jillian Pagan. Jillian, come on out. Round of applause. You know, I have a shirt in that pattern.
You know, we must shop at the same store.
I think you mean Mickey's of Glendale. So Jillian here is probably one of the biggest mansion fans in our writing, no, the biggest mansion fan in our writing department. So we wanted to bring her out to talk about the original writer for the Haunted Mansion. So Jillian's going to tell us a little bit about X Atencio.
Hello, foolish mortals. Kevin, you said that there were only going to be like 20 people here.
Oh, I lied.
Well, thank you all so much for coming out to socialize as we celebrate 50 years with our iconic Haunted Mansion. Like all of you, I have always been a huge fan of the mansion. It seems like everyone has a story about what that mansion's story means to them. For me, the Haunted Mansion... For me, the Haunted Mansion gave me my favorite memory about my mom. You see, my mom was a stretching room reciter, which means that she would say the narration right alongside the ghost host. Now, I know this is controversial in the Haunted Mansion community, so I just wanted to say that if my mother ever interrupted your tour, please forgive her. She knows not what she did. And honestly, if you were ever in the stretching room with her, she probably did interrupt your tour a little bit because my mom did not just recite the speech. Oh no, she would boom it out loud. She would stand in the middle of the room and at the top of her lungs recite, "This chamber has no windows," which offers you this chilling challenge. Of course, there's always my way. This is fun getting like 4,000 of my closest friends.
They will keep going the whole show.
Well, my mom did too, and she would look up at the ceiling and she would scream and chuckle to herself. And, you know, as a kid, I was always partially a little like, "Mom, shit, you're embarrassing me." But mainly, I was just happy to see her so happy, right? I mean, here was a woman who worked so hard every day so that we could do nice things like go to Disneyland together. And now she has a moment, to just cut loose and have fun and relish in those spooky words. And when I was a little bit older, it kind of dawned on me that somebody at some point had to actually write those words, right? You know, I didn't really think about it as a kid. You just kind of come into the room and then all of a sudden there's a ghost talking to you. But somebody did write those words, and he put a lot of heart and time into crafting that speech that my mom loves so much. And of course, that person was Disney legend X Atencio. Now, X Atencio is probably best known for being a writer. He wrote our favorite song, Grim Grinning Ghosts, for the Haunted Mansion, as well as, of course, Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me, for Pirates of the Caribbean, and several other iconic attraction scripts. But X was actually a man of many talents. Like so many of the early Imagineers, he actually started as an animator at Walt Disney Studios, working on films like Pinocchio and Fantasia and Mary Poppins before he transferred to WED Enterprises, which, for those of you who don't know, as Chris was mentioning, WED Enterprises was kind of the early precursor to Walt Disney Imagineering. And it was during his time at WED that X worked as a concept artist on several attractions, including, of course, the Haunted Mansion. Actually, shameless plug, but right now at the Disneyland Gallery, you can actually see some of X Atencio's concept art for the Haunted Mansion. So if you're a Mansion fan, which I'm sure you all are, you have to go. So it was during his time working at WED as a concept artist that X kind of stumbled into his second career as a writer. You see, Walt Disney must have sensed some sort of hidden talent in X, because the story goes that one day, Walt called up X and assigned him to write the script for Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, up until this time, X hadn't really done any writing, and then during the process, he also had the idea to include a song, so then now he also has to write the lyrics for Yo-Ho, Pirate's Life for Me. But, you know, what are you gonna do? Tell Walt Disney, no, I can't do that? No. So in true Imagineering fashion, he dove right in and figured out how to write the script for it and knocked it out of the park. Which is lucky for all of us Haunted Mansion fans, because when the time came to give the Haunted Mansion a cohesive script, X was the one to do it. It's X Atencio's words that turn an eerie but otherwise ordinary seeming portrait gallery into a chamber with no windows and no doors that you're not sure you can escape. It's X Atencio's words that give the ghost host his spooky narration, and Madame Leota her spell to conjure forth spirits wherever they're at. And, of course, it's X Atencio's words that have had all of us singing about Grim Grinning Ghosts for the past 50 years. For me, it's X Atencio's words that gave me my favorite story about my mom. He was the master behind what was arguably the most iconic script of any Disney attraction. And it's clear that the story he crafted has touched all of us. But even the great X Atencio was not perfect in his first draft. Like many scripts, his first script underwent a disquieting metamorphosis of sorts. And so with that hint about what's next, I'll turn things back over to Kevin.
Sure. So going through our show writing archives, and we have documents upon documents, we found a 1968 draft of the Haunted Mansion script. Now this is from just a year before opening, and there's so much like weirdness in this script. It's kind of like bizarro Haunted Mansion-y, right? So some things are there, some things are different, and it's just super, super crazy. And so we thought, what a perfect opportunity for us to take this, and let's do something special. So we're proud to present a dramatic reading of X Atencio's July 19th, 1968 draft of the Haunted Mansion script. Now, this is D23 Expo, so we had to crank the talent way up. You don't want Jillian and I doing this. So we have an all-star team about to come out. Jillian, you want to go ahead and introduce our first participant?
Our first participant, reading as the role of the mysterious medium. She wasn't quite Madame Leota yet. Reading as the medium is a member of our Disney Technology Group and X Atencio's granddaughter, Kelsey McCullough.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be celebrating the Haunted Mansion 50th anniversary with all of you, especially 2 weeks before what would have been Papa's 100th birthday. Really special. Thank you. Growing up as a kid, obviously Haunted Mansion has a soft spot in my heart because whenever we'd go to Disneyland as a family, mandatory ridership was on Papa's rides. Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, and it wasn't until I got a little older that I really started to understand why we called them Papa's rides. It was because those rides had so much of his personality in them. Just like him, they were effortlessly charming, they were witty, and they were full of irreverent humor. And as a kid, it was great because we didn't have to let the stories end when we got off the ride. We could go home with Papa, and his house was almost a mini Disneyland in itself. As much as he put himself into the stories he created, the stories he created also became a part of him. He had his Haunted Mansion tombstone planted in the backyard behind the diving board. He would make himself rum and tonic at happy hour every night, which is the most pirate drink I could ever imagine. And there were enough pictures of Mickey Mouse throughout the house to reasonably and rightly assume that Mickey Mouse was the favorite child of the family. And while everyone here probably knows quite a bit about his career, what they don't maybe know about is the time he spent after his time at Disney. And the characters and the stories he created and that creative spark within him never left. From the time he left, he was always making something, whether it was hand-drawn birthday cards for his grandchildren of them with their favorite Minnie or Mickey character, or taking something as mundane as produce bags from a grocery store and turning them into little Halloween ghosts to hang from the ceiling for decorations. He was always doing something and adding magic to everything he did. And as he got older, he was so increasingly amazed and appreciative of the fan response to the work that he had done. It was, he couldn't believe that the words he had written so long ago resonated with so many people and new audiences, and that was something that was really special for him later in life. And so while a lot of the stories may have started with him, It's all of you and your stories and your connection with the attraction that allow those stories to live on. So thank you.
All right, we'll take a spot. Jillian, our next performer.
Our next guest is coming straight from the mansion itself. Tightrope walker extraordinaire and my personal favorite happy haunt, Miss Sally Slater.
Now, we have one role left, the iconic ghost host. Now, for me, I am super excited. We had to find an actor with the gravitas, with the talent, the name recognition. We needed to get the biggest name possible, and I am confident in saying that we have casted the best possible ghost host for this presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the Phantom of the Muppet Theater, Uncle Deadly. Now we have some wonderful photos of Kelsey and her grandpa here. How old were you here, Kelsey?
I was about 4 in the one on the right and the one up top, and somewhere in my 20s on the other one.
You guys ever get past Town Square in any of your visits or all the photos?
Yeah, it was great. Everything right there. You got the window, you went home.
And then of course we have Sally. Sally, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, of course. I just love getting out of the house.
Fantastic. And of course we have Uncle Deadly at the end of the stage. Uncle Deadly, welcome.
Hello. Wonderful to be here.
Now, Uncle Deadly, when's the last time you were at the Haunted Mansion?
Oh, well, I haunt the Haunted Mansion every Tuesday and Thursday. I take the weekends off.
Fantastic. So we have a whole script to get through. So without further ado, Sally, would you please lead the way?
Of course. The patrons enter the foyer of the Haunted Mansion to the dismal tolling of a church bell. A ghostly voice is heard from a talking marble bust in a niche high in the corner of the room. The opening statement would have no pertinent relation to the show, so those who might miss the first part would not be slighted.
When the dismal knell of a requiem bell calls the spirits forth from the tomb. And there's a dog howl. May I hear some dog howls, please? Wonderful. And the mournful sound of a baying hound chills your soul with an aura of gloom. Then some ghost wailing. Let me hear you, ghost wailing. Yes, we'll work on that. Then the spirits ride on a ghostly wind, wailing their song of doom.
The doors of the first elevator open, and the voice of the ghost host, loud enough for all to hear, comes from the far wall of the elevator.
Welcome, foolish mortals. Welcome to the Haunted Mansion. I am your host, your invisible ghost host. Our tour will begin here in the ghostly gallery, so kindly step all the way in, please, and make room for everyone. There's no turning back now.
60 patrons fill the first elevator, and the doors silently close behind them like a sliding secret panel. As the elevator descends, the room seems to stretch, almost imperceptibly. There are portraits on the 4 of the 8 walls that likewise elongate with the stretching room. As the paintings elongate, a comical topper to an otherwise macabre composition is revealed. For example, a pompous, shifty-eyed Machiavellian character, elegantly dressed in an outerweight coat and a red sash, is revealed to be trouserless. As the painting continues to elongate, he is seen clad in striped shorts and standing on a keg of gunpowder. Finally, a candle in which has ignited a short fuse tops off the gag as the painting reaches its full length.
Here you see portraits of some of our more renowned ghost guests as they appeared in their corruptible mortal state. Alexander Nichikov, for instance, was an anarchist who came to us with a bang one night.
The voice moves to a portrait on the opposite wall, a painting of a rose-sniffing woman. As the picture elongates, she is seen sitting on a tombstone, mourning her late husband, who she has apparently murdered by implanting a hatchet in his head.
And the widow, Abigail Pate Cleaver, who was preceded here by her husband. He never quite got used to her split personality.
Again, the voice moves to another portrait.
Ah, your cadaverish expressions indicate an awareness of a psychic phenomenon. Everything appears to be elongating. Or that can be your imagination, perhaps.
Now, the voice pans around the room. That would cause the guest to examine the entire chamber as he speaks.
One thing, however, is fact. This chamber contains no windows and no doors. Your world is locked out, and consequently, you are locked in. But don't be frightened. I'll show you how I found my way out.
A lightning and thunder effect darkens the room, but illuminates an attic area beyond a scrimmed ceiling. A corpse is hanging by the neck from the rafter, gently swaying to and fro.
A bit drastic, perhaps, but effective, and it did provide easy access to otherwise inaccessible places. For now, I walk through walls. I'll be seeing you, I hope.
The voice fades as though the ghost host has walked through the walls of the elevator. In a moment, the door slides open and the patrons are met by a flash of lightning and a clap of thunder. A stormy sky is framed in a large window directly opposite the elevator exit.
You didn't think I'd really leave you trapped in there, did you? Of course not. But come, we must continue our tour.
The voice precedes the group down the corridor, where other paintings change into ghostly apparitions, which each flash of lightning.
These are portraits of some of the other spirits brought here from the darkest tombs of the earth. There are 999 ghosts here, but we have room for 1,000. Any volunteers? No. Then step lively now, it may be your last chance. Step lively, step lively, step lively.
The patrons arrive at the Omnimover loading platform, where they embark in pairs for the next leg of their tour. As they board, the ghost host, still from exterior speakers, bids them a fond adieu.
Your carriage awaits to take you on your little trip into the unknown, the habitat of the spirits. I think you'll be safer this way. Bon voyage, and as we say, rest in peace.
Having boarded the Omnimovers, the patrons proceed into the blackness of a twilight zone. As the Omnimovers proceed from illusion to illusion, a soft, almost subliminal voice is heard from the speakers in each vehicle. What was that? It must be your imagination. You're not quite sure, are you? Perhaps it's just your own pounding heart. In the seance scene that follows, a very unusual seance is in progress. The medium has taken the form of a shrunken head floating inside a crystal ball. As she chants her weird incantations, fantastic apparitions are highlighted in different areas of the room. Bells ring, horns blow, and inanimate objects float freely about the room.
Rap on a table, wave a gold wand,
Send us a message from somewhere beyond. Horned toad and lizard, tail of a rat. Speak to us, Albert, wherever you're at. Levitate, volatate, fly through the air. Raise up the table to show us you're there. Coffins and hearses and things that go boo. Blow on a trumpet to give us a clue. Wizards and witches that cast evil spells. Give us a sign by ringing some bells. Werewolf and raven, vampire bat, do you return, half bat and half cat? Demons and goblins, things that are vile, come from beyond as a pink crocodile. Ghost hounds and banshees, creatures that howl. Which one is Albert, the skull or the owl?
From the seance scene, the Omnimovers proceed through a second twilight zone, where the spirits begin to manifest themselves, albeit vaguely. Here, a continuation of the floating objects from the seance scene have ghosts attached to them, fading in and out of view. For example, a spook is seen ringing a bell that previously appeared to be floating in space. Two spirits are seen toting a couch. They fade from view, and the couch is suspended in midair. Oh, now, for this next part, Uncle Deadly, darling, would you be so kind as to do some sound effects for me?
You'd like me to do some sound effects?
Yes, I would.
All right, I hadn't prepared for that, but I should give it a try. First, allow me to warm my voice up.
Great.
Ready?
All right. The patrons emerge from this second twilight zone into an area of more defined architectural design. A large area that could be described as an activities room. Here, the spirits take on the definite form for the first time, like the upstairs maid who is squeaking the doors. There also would be reflection gags like a granny knitting and rocking. And the safari hunter and the tiger.
Bang! Roar!
Very good, Deadly. The focal point of this scene would be a ghostly organist furiously playing the ghost theme on a grand pipe organ. Thunder and lightning and wind-blown draperies add to the organist's recital. Fabulous.
There you go.
The patrons proceed from this troubled scene through an attic, where other apparitions cavort wildly amongst the trunks and boxes to the frantic tempo of the organ music. Finally, they escape through an attic window and hang precariously on the edge of the roof overlooking the graveyard below. By tilting the Omnimovers, the patrons experience the sensation of falling backwards off the roof. They recover in a tangle of gnarled trees, whose branches seem to grasp at them like witches' hands. Beady little eyes peer at them from the darkness. Arriving at the graveyard, the tour takes on an upbeat note. Here, the spooks have a grand soiree cavorting gaily amongst the crypts and tombstones.
Ding!
That was my favorite one yet.
Thank you.
The Omnimovers proceed through the rollicking haunting party towards a large imposing crypt. Groups of silly ghosts in hitchhiking attitudes line the paths of the Omnimovers as they approach the entrance of the tomb. The solemn voice of the ghost host is heard once more from the speakers as they approach the crypt.
Foolish mortals, this is the end. I mean, it's the end of the ride. Now, as you prepare to leave, make sure you have gathered your personal belongings. But a word of warning. Should one of those hitchhiking ghosts be riding with you beyond this point and raises your safety bar at the end, well, I'm afraid you're just stuck with it. The silly thing will probably follow you home.
The Omnimovers pass a series of ornate mirrors where the patrons see themselves reflected, and riding in each vehicle is the unmistakable form of a grinning ghost, visible only in the mirrored reflection.
But remember, for each one we lose, we demand a replacement! We'll be seeing you then, real soon. Ha 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 ha.
The Omnimovers arrive at the unloading platform, and the patrons disembark. From here, they walk through the Haunted Mansion Cemetery, which is adjacent to the house, and exit through the iron gates that open onto the street. And that is the end.
See?
One last thing before we wrap up. Let's go back to Ching and Yumi. Let's take a look at our artwork to be silent auctioned off for the Ryman Arts program. Let's start right over there. Ooh, one-of-a-kind pieces created during this presentation. So if you guys are wanted bid on these, head to the Ryman Arts booth. Thank you. Round of applause for artists. All right, we get everybody come out one last time. Thank you all for joining us. We have, there's Jillian. Come on out, Jillian. Anyone else backstage who want to come out and say goodbye? Thank you guys for joining us for our